I never expected a Christmas gift to destroy a family. But then again, I never expected to realize I wasn't really part of it. It all started with a message I sent on impulse. Can't help anymore. Mom said no. You're on your own now. I hit send, canceled the bank transfers, and tossed my phone onto the kitchen counter like it had betrayed me. It was Christmas morning, and I was 33, old enough to know better, but still foolish enough to hope for something different. I showed up at my parents' house with a smile forced on my face and a thick envelope of cash in my coat pocket. Money for their electric bill, gas, and groceries. You know, festive cheer in the form of unpaid adult responsibilities. But the second I stepped inside, I knew. The smell of cinnamon and laughter hit me first, followed by the piercing sound of my sister's kids tearing through wrapping paper. And there she was, my mother, Clara, supposedly too sick to watch my daughter even for one night. But there she sat, healthy as ever, bouncing my nephew on her knee like she'd just stepped out of a Hallmark movie. My heart didn't break. It calcified. She turned when she noticed me and plastered on that smile I knew too well. "Micah, what a surprise!" she chirped, like she hadn't seen me in months. As if I hadn't been paying their mortgage for the last 2 years. As if I hadn't begged her last week to babysit my daughter so I could finally take a break. I couldn't even speak. My hand clenched around the envelope. The weight of it suddenly felt ridiculous. "You said you couldn't watch Lila," I said slowly, voice tight. "Because of your health." The room paused, like someone had hit mute. My mom blinked, her smile faltering for just a second. My sister Trina, of course, jumped in, brushing her blonde hair over her shoulder like this was all a huge misunderstanding. "She's been overwhelmed lately, you know," Trina said with a shrug. Didn't want to push her too hard. I stared at the 3 kids crawling on the floor. Clara didn't look overwhelmed. She looked fine. She looked happy. "She's literally babysitting right now," I said, keeping my voice even. Clara sighed and rubbed her temple like I was the source of her stress. "That's different, Micah. Trina needs help. She's raising them alone." My world tilted. Trina has never lived alone a day in her life. Every bill she's ever had was either paid by Clara, her ex-husband, or surprise me. I was the fallback guy, the financial safety net, the one who was never really invited but always expected to show up with money and gratitude. I asked the question I'd been swallowing for years. "So Trina needs you more than I do?" No one answered. My dad looked away. Trina rolled her eyes. Clara just gave me that tired look, the one that says, "Don't make this about you." It was always about Trina. And suddenly, it all made sense. The dodged calls, the exaggerated coughs, the mysterious fatigue that kicked in only when I needed something. It was never about her being sick. It was about control. She didn't want to risk losing the financial leash she had on me. So she played the part of the fragile mother who couldn't possibly lift a finger while I picked up the bills. And Trina? She knew. Of course she did. She'd always known. That was the moment something broke in me. Not a snap, not a scream. Just a slow, silent rupture. 33 years of being the reliable one, the ignored one, the sucker. "I get it now," I said. "I was never family, just your contingency plan." Clara gasped, a hand to her chest like I'd slapped her. "I'm not being cruel," I said, stopping her before the performance could begin. "What's cruel is using me for years and pretending you needed me when all you needed was my wallet." Trina stood, arms crossed. "God, you're so dramatic. Mom walks on eggshells around you because you act like a martyr." I turned to her, and this time I didn't hold back. "You're pathetic," I said quietly. "You eat up the attention because it's easier than standing on your own 2 feet." She scoffed, but I was already walking out the door. Clara called after me. My dad didn't move. Trina muttered something snarky behind me, but I didn't hear it. I was halfway down the driveway when I realized I was done. Not angry, not heartbroken, just done. When I got home, Lila was asleep upstairs. My wife, Jamie, was in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, sipping coffee. One look at my face, and she didn't ask. She just reached for my hand. I told her everything, from Clara's lies to Trina's smirk, to the moment I knew I wasn't part of the family. Just the guy who kept the lights on. Jamie didn't cry. She just nodded like she already knew. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm cutting them off," I said, completely. She squeezed my hand. And that night, I slept better than I had in a decade. The next morning, I canceled everything. Rent payments, utility transfers, the Amazon groceries they thought were magically free. I even blocked their numbers. Then I sent one final message to the family group chat, "You're on your own now. Good luck." And I hit block. What came next? Well, chaos. The silence after that final message was brief. First came the missed calls, 28 of them. I watched the screen light up over and over again, like they thought maybe I'd cave if they just tried hard enough. Then came the emails. Guilt-drenched paragraphs from Clara. Subject lines like, "We just need to talk and I'm still your mother." Trina even threw in a half-hearted, "Wow, so selfish." "Hope you're proud." I deleted every one without reading past the first line. When that didn't work, they tried Jamie. Big mistake. Jamie wasn't just my wife, she was my backbone. Calm, kind, fiercely loyal. She shut every call down with one swipe of her thumb and a smile like she'd been waiting her whole life to hang up on them. I think I fell in love with her all over again that week. But the real storm hit 3 days later when Clara took it public. She wrote this long, teary Facebook post with just enough drama to stir up the gossip chain. Claimed she was abandoned on Christmas by her ungrateful son. Threw in lines like I sacrificed everything for him and some people just turned cold. I didn't reply. Didn't comment. Just watched as mutual friends and distant family members lit up her comments with sympathy emojis and heartfelt prayers. And then I made my move. I posted my own response. No theatrics, just the truth. I've been paying my parents' bills for years. Rent, power, food. They told me they were too sick to watch my daughter. Then I walked in on them laughing and playing with my sister's kids. My daughter wasn't good enough for them. I was good enough to pay their way, not good enough to be family. I'm done. I turned my phone off and went to bed. By morning, everything had exploded. People the first hadn't spoken to since college were messaging me. Coworkers sent supportive texts. Even my boss pulled me aside that afternoon to say, "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." The reactions weren't all kind, of course. Some relatives chimed in with the usual, "But she's your mother" nonsense. But others shared their own stories. Stories about being the reliable one, the scapegoat, the invisible support beam everyone leans on until it breaks. It was like I'd said the quiet part out loud and it echoed. But Trina, she got the worst of it. Her whole single mom warrior persona cracked under the pressure. People started noticing how often she vacationed without her kids. How she always seemed to need money but somehow never worked. One of her exes even commented, "Told y'all." Brutal. And then just when I thought it was over, there was a knock at the door. Jamie and I froze mid-dinner. Lila was upstairs watching cartoons, the sound drifting faintly down the hallway. I peeked through the peephole. Clara and my dad. I hadn't seen him in years. His name's Russell, but I always just called him Dad. A quiet man. Not cruel, just absent. The kind of guy who never took a side even when he should have. He looked older. Smaller. His shoulders slumped like they were carrying something heavy, and not just emotionally. Clara was in full performance mode, red-rimmed eyes, trembling lips, theatrics as usual. I opened the door but didn't step aside. They weren't coming in. "We just want to talk," she said, voice quivering. "You can talk right there," I said. My voice was steady. Too steady. Even I noticed. Russell cleared his throat. "Micah, your mother's really upset." "She's upset she got caught," I corrected. Clara reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "We can't make rent," she said, voice cracking. "The electric company's threatening to shut us off. Is that what you want? Your parents living in the dark?" It was like she had a script, straight from the book of guilt trips. "You have options," I said. "Sell the house. Get jobs," asked Trina. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Russell looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight like a kid being scolded. "Son, you never meant for me to find out," I cut in. "That's different." Clara's face hardened. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us?" I smiled, cold, tired, done. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" I asked. "Name one thing in the past 10 years that wasn't about what I could give you." She opened her mouth, closed it again. Silence. That's what I thought. I stepped back and shut the door. And this time, I didn't look back. The next few weeks were quiet. Jamie and I took Lila to the coast for a weekend, built sand castles, ate overpriced ice cream, watched Lila chase seagulls like she'd never had a care in the world. I caught myself smiling without guilt, without thinking of Clara, without waiting for my phone to buzz. I started sleeping better, eating better, working better. Got promoted at the end of the quarter. Apparently, I was easier to work with when I wasn't constantly on edge from family drama. Life was finally mine again. But of course, peace never lasts. It started with whispers. One of my cousins texted me, "Hey, your mom's telling people you had a breakdown?" Then an old neighbor emailed Jamie, "I just wanted to check in. Clara said you guys were going through something difficult." They were spinning a new narrative. The good son gone mad. The burnout. The ungrateful child who snapped. Classic Clara. Jamie shrugged it off. "Let him talk," she said. "People believe what they want to believe." I nodded. But something gnawed at me. Not regret. Not exactly. Doubt. Was I being too harsh? Too cold? Had I really burned the bridge? Or had I finally realized there was never a bridge to begin with, just me, building it alone? One night, my aunt called, the only one who ever really saw through Clara's act. "They're being evicted," she said bluntly. "Russ tried to get his job back at the warehouse. They wouldn't take him. Trina's been begging people for money. It's bad, Micah." I didn't say anything. "You've done more than enough," she added. "I just thought you should know." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, watching Lila sleep through the baby monitor, listening to Jamie brush her teeth in the next room, hearing the quiet hum of a home that wasn't drowning in drama. And I asked myself the question that had been echoing since Christmas. Was I a bad son? But the answer didn't come that night. It came slowly, in pieces, in Jamie's unwavering support, in Lila's giggles on a sunny morning, in my own reflection in the mirror, tired, yes, but free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't someone's backup plan. I wasn't the ATM. I wasn't the second choice. I was just Micah, and I was learning how to breathe again. It was a Tuesday. Jamie was making grilled cheese, humming to whatever playlist Lila had fallen asleep listening to. I was unpacking groceries. The house smelled like melted butter and lavender floor cleaner. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't late, but something about it made both of us freeze. It was the kind of ring that carried weight. Not casual, not expected. Jamie gave me a look. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the door, slow and steady, no rush. Just enough time to brace myself. Through the peephole, I saw him, Russell, alone this time. He stood there with his hands jammed into his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. He looked smaller than I remembered, older too. Like the world had chewed him up and finally stopped pretending it hadn't. I cracked the door but didn't open it wide. "Hey, Dad." His eyes flicked up. "Hey, Micah, can we talk?" I didn't say yes. I just stepped back and let him in. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe I just needed to hear what he'd say when Clara wasn't standing beside him, pulling the strings. We sat on opposite sides of the couch. The Christmas tree we still hadn't taken down blinked softly in the corner. He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at his hands. "She doesn't know I'm here," he said finally. I raised an eyebrow. "Clara doesn't know a lot of things. Apparently." He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I owe you an apology," he said. And not one of those vague "we didn't mean to" types. A real one. That caught my attention. I waited. He took a deep breath, like the words physically hurt. "I failed you. I let her run the show. For years, I watched her push you aside, favor Trina, lie to you, and I said nothing. I should have said something. It didn't feel like a performance. Not like Clara's speeches, all tears and trembling hands. This was quieter, rough, like rust being chipped away. "Why didn't you?" I asked, not accusing, just tired. He looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Honesty. Because I was a coward. The words landed like bricks. It was easier to let her have her way. Less fighting. Less noise. I convinced myself it didn't matter. That you were strong enough. That you didn't need me the way Trina did. "But I did," I said, softer than I expected. "I needed you to back me up. Just once." He nodded. "I know, and I didn't. And I'm sorry." It didn't fix anything, but damn if it didn't feel like a start. We sat there for a while, no background music. Just the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the quiet tick of the wall clock. I asked him how things were going. He hesitated. We moved in with Trina. That made me blink. Seriously? He sighed. Clara's idea. Trina wasn't thrilled about it either. Guess she finally realized what it's like living with her. I smirked despite myself. Karma's a funny thing. She's not handling it well, he added. Clara, she's still waiting for you to crawl back, I think. I nodded. She'll be waiting a long time. He didn't argue. I should go, he said, standing. Didn't want anything, just wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob. You've got a beautiful life here, he said. And that little girl upstairs? You're a better father than I ever was. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He left, footsteps crunching through the frost-covered lawn, disappearing into the quiet night. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. Just sad. Sad for what never was. Sad for the years I spent trying to prove my worth to people who never really saw me, but also relieved, because now I could finally stop trying. The next few weeks blurred together in a warm, steady rhythm. Lila learned how to count to 20. Jamie got a raise at work. I finally fixed the squeaky door hinge in the hallway. We started house hunting again. Somewhere with better schools, more space, a backyard big enough for Lila to run barefoot without worrying about traffic or rusty nails. Then, one afternoon, a card arrived in the mail. No return address, just a familiar looping script on the front. Inside was a stock photo of smiling snowmen. On the back, 3 words written in shaky cursive. We miss you. No apology. No explanation. Just a sentimental guilt grenade wrapped in glitter. I dropped it into the trash. Jamie didn't ask what it was. She didn't have to. But that night, as we were putting up the last of the Christmas lights, yes. We were late, don't judge. The doorbell rang again. My stomach sank. Jamie gave me a quick kiss on the shoulder. I've got it. I watched from the hallway as she opened the door, her expression unreadable. She turned after a short conversation. It's your dad. Just him. I nodded, surprised by how calm I felt. Russell stood in the doorway, hat in hand like a man visiting a grave. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Can I come in? He asked. Sure, I said. 5 minutes. He sat on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure if he deserved to be there. I just wanted to thank you, he said. For what? For standing up to us. To her, I couldn't do it. I still struggle to. I didn't reply. Just waited. She kicked me out of Trina's last week, he said. We're not together anymore. Not really. She doesn't say it, but it's over. That hit harder than I expected. Where are you staying? I asked. With a buddy from the hardware store. Just until I get back on my feet. I nodded slowly. You're not asking for help, are you? I said, half a joke, half warning. He shook his head. No, just wanted to see you and tell you I'm trying. We talked a little longer about work, about life, about Lila, who peeked downstairs to wave at him, then ran off giggling. He smiled, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Pride. Not in himself, in me. When he left, I walked him to the door. This time, it wasn't tense. Just unfinished. I don't know what happens next, he said. But I'm proud of you, son. I stood there long after he left, watching the stars blink into view. Jamie found me there, arms crossed, eyes thoughtful. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. And this time, I meant it. We moved into a new house in March. Just outside of town, quiet neighborhood, good schools, big backyard with a swing set I built myself. Lila turned 4. Dinosaur-themed party, of course. Green frosting everywhere. Jamie laughed so hard she cried. And then one morning, just as the world was starting to feel settled, I got a text. Unknown number. Micah. It's Trina. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't spoken to her since Christmas. No calls, no emails, not even a snide comment on Facebook. But there she was, wanting to talk. I showed Jamie the message. She raised an eyebrow. You gonna meet her? I didn't know. But something told me I should, not to forgive, not to reconnect, just to listen. I didn't reply to Trina right away. The message sat on my phone screen all night like a weight. Not heavy exactly, just awkward. Like seeing an old photo of someone you don't recognize anymore, but once loved. I kept coming back to it, reading it over and over. Micah, it's Trina. Can we talk? No accusations. No sarcasm. No guilt. Just that. Jamie didn't push me either way. She just said, whatever you decide, make sure it's for you. Not out of habit. So the next morning, I texted back 2 words. When and where. We met the following Monday at a small cafe near downtown. Neutral territory. She was already there when I walked in, sitting at a table in the back, clutching her coffee like it was a lifeline. Trina looked different. Not tired exactly, just real. Like someone who'd finally stopped pretending everything was fine. When she saw me, she stood up too fast and almost knocked over her cup. I caught it out of reflex. Old muscle memory. Micah, she said, almost whispering it. I nodded and sat down. Neither of us said anything for a minute. Then, without even looking up, she said, I owe you an apology. That. I wasn't expecting. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She took a shaky breath. I've been awful to you. For years. And I knew it. I just didn't care enough to stop. Not until now. Still, I stayed quiet. Trina stared at her coffee like it held the answers. When Mom and Dad moved in with me, I thought it'd be fine. I thought maybe they'd help with the kids, or at least pitch in. But they didn't. She looked up then, eyes dull. All they did was complain, criticize. Mom said my cooking was bland, said I was raising lazy kids. Dad just sat around like furniture. Sounds familiar, I said, dry. She gave a bitter smile. Yeah, I figured. Took about a month before I realized they weren't really helping, they were freeloading. Expecting everything, offering nothing. I nodded slowly, and then they started asking you for money. Her silence confirmed it. I'm not saying I didn't deserve it, she added quickly. I did. I let them dump everything on you for years because it was easier than facing the truth. I convinced myself you were fine, strong, had it together. You were always the stable one. That doesn't mean I was okay, I said. I know, her voice cracked, and I'm sorry. The words didn't erase everything, but hearing them did something I hadn't expected. It softened the edge of my resentment. Not because she earned it, but because I didn't want to carry it anymore. I appreciate that, I said, but one apology doesn't fix decades. She nodded. I'm not asking you to forgive me, I wanted you to know I finally see it. All of it. She paused, then added quietly, I'm trying to be better. For my kids, if nothing else. That part hit differently. Because no matter what history we shared, I could understand that. I knew what it meant to want to break a cycle. How are they? I asked before I could stop myself. Her whole body relaxed just a bit. Jack's in kindergarten now, loves puzzles. Emma's obsessed with soccer, and they still talk about Lila, especially Emma. She misses her. I felt something twist in my chest, a mix of guilt and something like nostalgia. Lila used to spend weekends with them. Before everything blew up, we both sat with that for a while. Look, Trina said finally, I know we'll never be best friends, probably not even close, but maybe we could start over, as adults, as parents. Without all the baggage, I studied her face. For the first time in years, I didn't see competition or jealousy or smug superiority. I just saw my sister, older, flawed, human, and trying. Maybe, I said, we'll see. I didn't tell Jamie about the meeting until that night. After Lila was in bed and we were curled up on the couch with a movie playing in the background. She apologized, I said. Jamie muted the TV. Really? Yeah, she actually meant it. Jamie leaned her head on my shoulder. How do you feel? I thought about it, about the cafe, the look in Trina's eyes. Tired, I admitted, but lighter. She smiled. That's progress. I nodded. It doesn't fix anything, but maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe just seeing things clearly is enough. Jamie kissed my shoulder. Maybe that's all you ever needed. Life continued. The new house felt more like home every day. Lila made fast friends at her preschool. Jamie started planning a vegetable garden, even though neither of us knew the first thing about growing tomatoes. Then one morning, I got another message. This one wasn't from Trina. It was from Clara. No words. Just a photo. Lila's old stuffed bear, Mr. Waffles, sitting on the porch bench outside their old house. I'd left it behind during the move, stuffed in a box I thought was just winter clothes. And somehow it had found its way back to her. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because of the bear, because of what it meant. Clara was trying to open the door again. Not with words. Not with guilt, just with something familiar. Something that would tug at me. I didn't reply. I went upstairs, picked up Lila from her nap, and held her in my arms for the longest time. "Daddy?" she mumbled sleepily. "Yeah, Bug. You okay?" I kissed her head. "Yeah, I'm good." And I was. Because for once, I wasn't running in circles, chasing approval. I wasn't carrying their weight or their shame. I was just me. A husband, a father, a man who finally understood the difference between being needed and being valued. A week passed after the photo of Mr. Waffles. No message followed, no apology, no explanation, just the bear, on the porch, sitting like a ghost from a better time. I didn't reply. I didn't take the bait. But it lingered. Not because I wanted her back in my life. I didn't. I knew that now with every part of me. But because for the first time, Clara wasn't trying to control the narrative. She was just waiting. And that scared me more than all the guilt trips in the world. It was a Saturday when it happened. I had just come back from taking Lila to the park. Her shoes were muddy, her face covered in chocolate from a granola bar that had somehow turned into war paint. She was laughing so hard in the back seat, I forgot everything else for a moment. Until I pulled into the driveway and saw Russell sitting on our porch steps. No coat, just a hoodie. Face pale, shoulders hunched. He looked up, saw me, and stood. "I'm sorry to drop by like this," he said before I even turned off the engine. "It's about your mother." I didn't answer. Just got out of the car, unbuckled Lila, and handed her off to Jamie, who'd come to the door with that sixth sense of hers, already knowing something was wrong. "I'll be inside," she said softly, leading Lila away. Russell waited until the door closed. "She's in the hospital," he said. "Chest pains. They said it was a mild heart attack." I didn't feel what I thought I'd feel. Not relief, not panic, just stillness. "She's asking for you," he added. I crossed my arms. "Why not Trina?" He hesitated. "Trina's not speaking to her either. They had a blowout last week. Something about money, again. Of course, always about money." Russell looked tired, bone deep tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from decades of silence. "She's scared," he said. "Not just about dying without making things right." I didn't flinch. That assumes she wants to make things right, or that she even knows what that means. "I think she does," he said. "She just doesn't know how to say it. That wasn't my problem anymore. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished." "Is she stable?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, she'll be okay. They're keeping her overnight." I rubbed the back of my neck. "And you came all this way just to tell me?" He looked away. "No. I came because I wanted you to hear it from me, not some dramatic post online, and because I thought you deserved the chance to decide for yourself." That part stuck, decide for yourself. It was the first time Russell had ever said something like that to me. I didn't go that day. I took Lila out to the backyard and pushed her on the swing until the sun started dipping low behind the fence. Her laughter echoed into the sky, and for a while, it drowned out everything else. But later that night, long after she was asleep and Jamie had gone to bed with a book half finished on her chest, I stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the moonlight spilling across the lawn, and I thought about forgiveness. Not the kind you give because it's expected, the kind you give when you're ready, when the anger isn't burning anymore, when the wound is scarred, not bleeding. That kind. I showed up the next afternoon, not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to see for myself, needed to look in her eyes and know if any part of her finally saw me. The hospital room was quiet when I walked in, just the faint beep of a monitor and the sterile hum of machines. Clara was awake, propped up in bed, looking smaller than I remembered. Her skin looked pale, her eyes tired, not pitiful, not manipulative, just tired. She blinked when she saw me. "Micah," she whispered. I didn't speak, just sat in the chair across from her bed. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "I didn't think you'd come." I shrugged. "Didn't think I would either." Another beat. "I messed up," she said. "A lot. I waited. I lied to you, used you, took your help for granted. I made excuses because it was easier than admitting I needed to change." I watched her closely. No tears, no performance, just words. Real ones. "I hurt you," she continued. "And not just once. Over and over. You were a good son, and I treated you like a bank account. Like a backup plan." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Still, I stayed quiet. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But I want you to know, I see it now. I see you." That hit harder than I expected. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. But because it meant she'd finally stopped pretending. I stood up after a moment. She looked at me and for once, didn't try to hold me there. "I hope you get better," I said, "for yourself." Then I left. Not angry, not broken, just at peace. A few weeks passed. Clara recovered and moved into a small apartment with Russell. She sold the old house finally and started downsizing her life in ways that seemed intentional. Less about punishment, more about acceptance. Trina and I spoke occasionally, not every week, but sometimes enough to know we were slowly building something new, something real. Jamie and I planted our first tomato plant in the backyard. It didn't grow, but we laughed about it and planted another one. Lila made a new friend on the block. Her name was Maya, and she had a bubble wand that never seemed to run out. They were inseparable. One Sunday afternoon, while Jamie was inside folding laundry and I was building a bookshelf that absolutely refused to stay level, Russell stopped by. He didn't knock, just leaned on the fence like he used to when I was a kid, and he didn't want to interrupt my playtime. "I'm not staying long," he said. "Okay," I replied, tightening a screw that did absolutely nothing. He hesitated. "I'm proud of you," he said again, like he needed me to believe it. And this time, I did. Spring came slow that year. Not in weather our backyard was already full of green, and the neighborhood buzzed with the usual hum of lawnmowers and weekend barbecues. But inside me, it came like a trickle. One small moment at a time. I wasn't checking my phone every hour for family drama. I wasn't budgeting with someone else's crisis in mind. I wasn't waking up with that quiet dread in my chest. Peace didn't arrive in a single dramatic wave. It just quietly replaced the noise. Clara never asked for anything after that hospital visit. No calls, no passive-aggressive texts, no surprise appearances. She sent a birthday card to Lila in May, just a simple one, with a short message in her new handwriting. Not the flowery, dramatic script of years past. Just, "Happy birthday, sweet girl." "Love, Grandma Clara." Jamie showed it to me after Lila opened it. There was no money inside, no guilt, no signature scent she used to spray on every envelope like some manipulative fairy godmother. Just a card, a small, quiet olive branch. We left it on the fridge for a while. Not because it meant everything, but because it didn't mean nothing. Trina and I weren't close, but we were trying. Slow, steady. She sent me a photo one day of her kids playing soccer in the park. Lila was there too, chasing butterflies instead of the ball, as usual. They looked happy, untouched by everything the adults had screwed up. I stared at that photo longer than I wanted to admit, then texted her back 2 words. "Looks good," she replied with a thumbs up and a heart. It was small, but like that card, it meant something. One Saturday morning in early June, I took Lila to a bookstore downtown. We didn't need more books. She already had 3 shelves overflowing with bedtime stories and sticker books. But we went anyway. It was one of those old shops with creaky floors, soft jazz in the background, and a little reading nook in the back with pillows that smelled like dust and sunshine. While Lila made herself at home with a pile of dinosaur stories, I wandered. And there, between 2 shelves, I ran into someone I never expected to see again. Clara. Her hair was grayer now, less styled. Her clothes more plain, almost conservative in a way I wasn't used to. She looked normal, not frail, not theatrical. Just a woman in her 60s looking for something to read. She noticed me at the same time I noticed her. We didn't rush toward each other. just stood there for a moment, strangers with shared history. Then she offered a soft, uncertain smile. I heard Lila likes dinosaurs. I nodded. She's obsessed. I saw her with Trina last week, she added. At the park. She's getting so big. She is. We stood there for a beat. Not awkward, not angry, just still. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said, sensing my hesitation. I'm just glad you're happy. I studied her face, and for once, I didn't see the woman who'd lied to me, or used me, or manipulated me into silence. I saw a woman who had to live with her choices, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I wasn't seeking her approval. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never be enough. I didn't need her to fix the past. I just needed to stop carrying it. I am happy, I said, and I hope you find your version of that too. She nodded. I'm trying. I let her pass. Didn't hug her. Didn't ask her to join us. Didn't follow her out the door. But I didn't feel the weight I used to carry every time I saw her either. Later that night, after Lila was asleep and the house had gone quiet, I stepped out onto the back porch with a drink in hand. The stars were out. A breeze rolled through the trees, just strong enough to move the wind chime Jamie had hung from the gutter. I sat there for a long time, not thinking, just being. Then Jamie slid the door open and joined me, a blanket over her shoulders. You good? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. We didn't say anything for a while. Then I said, I saw my mom today. She looked at me, surprised, but didn't push. In a bookstore. We talked for maybe 2 minutes. No drama, no guilt. Just normal. Jamie smiled gently. That's something. Yeah, I said. It is. Russell called me the following week. Not about Clara. Not about anything serious. He wanted to know how to fix a leaky faucet. I laughed. Why are you calling me for that? Because YouTube lied to me, he said. I walked him through it step by step. He grumbled the whole time, but got it done. It was the most normal conversation we'd had since I was 12. He texted me later that night. Didn't flood the place. Thanks, kid. I stared at the message, then texted back, proud of you. Summer rolled in quietly. We hosted a barbecue for the neighborhood. Jamie's potato salad was a hit. Lila ran through sprinklers with her new friends. I grilled more than I ate, but didn't mind. That night, as I carried Lila up to bed, she leaned her head on my shoulder. Daddy? She whispered. Yeah, Bug, are you happy? I stopped halfway up the stairs. Not because I needed to think, but because I realized how easy it was to answer now. Yeah, I said. I really am. Here's the truth. No one tells you. Sometimes the people who raised you can't love you the way you need. Sometimes they don't know how. Sometimes they don't want to try. And sometimes you have to walk away, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for them. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Peace doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it's just letting the past be the past and choosing to build a future that looks nothing like the place you came from. That's what I did. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to call me family. I had already made one, and that was more than enough. Story 2. You will always be there for us. My brother made fun of it. You have 30 days to sort out your financial situation, I said icily. They contacted me from a hotel 6-7 months later. I took charge of our household at the age of 23. Not voluntarily, but out of necessity. I used to be a young man with lofty goals and entry-level income. The next day, I had to deal with a mortgage, utilities, and the burden of 2 grown-ups who would drain me for the next 6 years. I've been covering my mother's and brother's expenses for 6 years, including groceries, utilities, and their mortgage. I eventually quit last month. From a Hotel 6, they are now phoning me and pleading with me to return home. However, I'm not sure whether I care because there is no longer a home. This is not a letter of pity. The reason I'm writing this is to find out whether I've finally gone too far. Dad unexpectedly suffered a heart attack. He was cutting the grass one day. He was gone the next day. Laura hadn't had a job for over 20 years, Mom. Tyler, my younger brother, was a second-year college student who lacked desire and employment skills. I had just begun working at Meridian Logistics and was barely making enough money to pay off my college loans and rent. Dad left a small but insufficient amount of life insurance. Perhaps 6 months' worth of spending would be covered by the coverage. After that, someone had to keep the lights on. "Until I'm able to stand again," Mom said, her eyes dry and ringed with crimson. By then, she had ceased weeping. The numbness was already there. "I'll get a campus job and find something part-time," Tyler added, although it seemed like he would much rather eat glass. I didn't mind at first. We were in mourning. We were dependent on one another. In order to save money on rent, I moved back into the bedroom I shared as a child, took on weekend jobs, and used every dollar I had to support our family. It was meant to be short-term. It wasn't. Tyler damaged his automobile 3 months after his father passed away. He was fortunate to escape with only a fractured arm after texting while driving. The cost of insurance soared. To make up the gap, I obtained a second job stacking shelves at a liquor shop. "James, it's only temporary," Mom reassured me while holding my shoulder till Tyler stood up again. Mom still hadn't found a job after 6 months. Her justifications changed with remarkable ingenuity. Despite experiencing loss, worry, and a sore back, she continued to play tennis with her pals every Wednesday. The waterworks began as I pressed her on it. "Your father would be very disappointed," she would remark, wiping away tears that appeared to come spontaneously. This family was constantly under his care. I would get a sucker blow to the gut from the guilt. I would concede, put in another double shift, and attempt to ignore the mounting animosity, causing my chest to burn. Tyler, meanwhile, left college after his 3rd year. "I'm not interested in it." As though we hadn't already squandered thousands on his schooling, he shrugged. He worked at a number of occupations, all of which were somehow beneath him. Target cashier and 2 dull Starbucks baristas too early in the morning. Data input at Dad's previous company. 2, repeated. After 2 weeks of employment, he would decide it was beneath him and abruptly leave. After that, he would play video games while lounging about the home until his mother persuaded him to apply someplace else. Tyler never appeared to go without the most recent iPhone check, even though he made absolutely no contribution to the home. High-end clothing? Verify. Going on a weekend getaway with friends? Verify. I continued to wear the same 3 pairs of jeans until they started to get holes in them. The figures were startling. A monthly mortgage of $1,800, utilities of $400,600, and food of $500. More. I could have used the $150,000 in unpaid debts, auto insurance, property taxes, home repairs, and the money Tyler's pals stole from our refrigerator to buy a house and start a future for myself. I made an effort to have the difficult talks. I tried, for heaven's sake. "I can't do this much longer, Mom." "Spreadsheets on the kitchen table," I said one evening. "Take a look at these figures." "I'm going to drown." Her eyes scanned the pages as if they were in hieroglyphics. "But you're doing a great job at your work." That promotion was a huge assistance. Furthermore, you don't have a family to provide for. The real kicker was that I was too busy taking care of them to be able to have a family. When partners learned that my family would always come first, relationships ended, due to financial necessity, not choice. Because I couldn't save a cent, I placed my life on indefinite hold, missed weekend trips to replace the leaky roof, and canceled dates to make Tyler's vehicle payment. When confronted, Tyler was even worse. "Calm down, dude. Right now, I'm in between opportunities. Next month, I might be able to get anything in sales thanks to my friend." The following month never arrived. They were complaining about my absences when I was working 60 hours a week. While they were criticizing my mood, I was getting by on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep. While they were organizing getaways, I was experiencing panic attacks in the restroom at work. The irony would be paid for by me. In their opinion, the greatest praise was when they claimed that I reminded them of their father. I wanted to shout at the similarity. Dad took care of his family since he was responsible for them. I was taking care of folks who viewed me as their own ATM. It was a Thursday when I turned 29. Due to a staffing shortage, I worked 2 shifts and stayed late to complete the quarterly reports. My birthday went unnoticed at work. I hadn't brought it up. At 10 o'clock at night, I drove home, fatigued, but with a glimmer of hope that perhaps Mom had remembered. Perhaps a cake would be served, or at the very least, the day would be acknowledged. Through open windows, the home was illuminated like a Christmas base. I briefly believed they had given me a surprise party. I started crying at the notion. Perhaps they were concerned. Then I noticed that the roadway was lined with automobiles. Tyler's friends, the same people who drank my drink, ate my food, and never once expressed gratitude. In the living room, I discovered them. Tyler and 5 of his friends were playing the new PlayStation 5 while splayed out on furniture that I had purchased. I was unaware that he had made a transaction. The coffee table was covered with empty pizza boxes, high-end booze bottles that I couldn't afford to purchase for myself. I was half empty everywhere I went. Mom was chuckling at something on her phone while she sat in the corner. When I walked in, she looked up, her smile dimming a bit. "You're home early, huh?" As if it were 10 p.m., she said. It was early after a 14-hour day. A tectonic plate of anger and resentment that had been building strain for 6 years suddenly slipped as something inside of me changed. "You people have no idea how much I give up for you." My voice was quiet, too silent. There was silence in the room. The game halted. Mom let out a loud sigh. Whoa, the martyr act is back again. Without taking his eyes from the television, Tyler snickered. "You're not having any difficulties. You earn a nice living. I earn a solid living, yet I never have time to treat myself." Despite my best attempts, my voice rose as I spoke. "Are you aware of today's date?" Blank looks. "My birthday is today. It's my 29th birthday. Did you both remember?" Tyler gave a shrug. "Tomorrow, we were going to say something. Relax." Dave, a perennial mooch who was one of his buddies, had the gall to chuckle. I was broken by that chuckle. The last thread of duty cut right through. I answered, my voice suddenly firm. "I'm done. I'm not paying for anything else as of right now. Not your auto insurance, not your utilities, not your mortgage." They didn't notice anything. Tyler stopped playing his game. Mom placed her phone down. Mom responded, "You don't mean that," but her tone had a hint of doubt in it. "Never in my life have I meant more." Tyler chuckled, followed by a harsh, contemptuous sound that went deeper than he realized. "You will always be there for us. Both of you are guilty. 2 answers. If you left us, Dad would be devastated." The last nail in our relationship's coffin was Mom's giggle of agreement. They were correct. Unless I made the decision then and there, I would never quit. Something inside of me broke all the guilt, all the obligation, and all the mistaken responsibility as I looked at those arrogant, entitled expressions. Lost. Let's see. "Silently," I said. As they continued their celebration, I went upstairs to my room. I packed my laptop, critical papers, and necessary clothing in 2 luggage. My share of the joint account was moved to my personal account. I made it clear in the message that I would not be giving any more financial assistance. With instant effect, I left the room while they were still giggling. That evening, I booked into a Holiday Inn. I didn't miss the irony. Lastly, I felt guilty about spending money on myself. I waited for the guilt to overwhelm me while I lay awake and stared at the ceiling. It never materialized. Rather, I felt empty, light, followed by a near-calm moment. I had no one to answer to except myself for the first time in 6 years. I located a little studio apartment the next morning and paid the first 3 months' rent in full. I stopped all of the automatic payments associated with their bills. I deleted my name after phoning each utility company. I saw a lawyer who verified that I was not legally required to provide for my brother and adult mother. I then wrote Mom an email outlining my choice, along with precise deadlines. "You have 30 days to sort out your financial situation. The mortgage is due on the 1st, and if the utilities are not paid by the due dates, they will be turned off. I have 2 weeks' worth of groceries remaining." The reaction was swift and tremendous. There were so many alerts on my phone, "This cannot be done to us." Indeed, I could. What specifically has she done for me recently, considering all that I've done for you? Your father is exactly like you. Money is on everyone's mind. Dad had devoted his life to supporting ungrateful people, so, sure, I might have been like him. Ultimately, over the course of several days, the strategies changed. Anger came first, followed by tears, negotiations, and threats. Mom said she would tell everyone in the family that I was leaving her. "Go ahead," I said. I had years' worth of bank statements. Tyler took a more straightforward stance. To me, you're dead, followed by, can I just get enough for this month's car payment? Extended family got involved. Flying monkeys deployed to pressure me back into line. Aunt Kathy called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. Uncle Steve sent long paragraphs about family obligation. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my character. I stopped answering calls, changed my number, went to work, came home to my tiny apartment, and slept through the night for the first time in years. No anxiety about bills, no worry about tomorrow, just silent. The effects hit sooner than even I imagined. Week 1, the internet was cut off. I know because Tyler messaged me from a friend's phone yelling about how he couldn't even game online. Week 3, Mom's vehicle was repossessed. She left a sobbing message stating she couldn't go to doctor's visits. She didn't have any doctor's appointments. Month 2, the first foreclosure notice appeared. This generated a new wave of terror. Mom texted saying she was in the hospital with chest problems. I phoned the hospital directly. They have no record of her. Every appeal, every manipulative tactic, every lie increased my determination. Every time I found myself doubting, I recalled that chuckle, the casual harshness of it, the entitlement, the full conviction that I would continue to throw myself on fire to keep them warm. On a Tuesday afternoon, they arrived at my place of employment. The security call came when I was in a meeting. Tyler and Mom were making a big scene in the lobby. Mom was in tears. Tyler was shouting, creating an act of humiliation to get me to comply. I returned to my meeting after asking security to escort them out. Voice calm, but hands trembling. I sent one last email later. Don't get in touch with me again. I'll request a restraining order if you visit my house or place of employment. I sobbed that night for the first time since leaving. For the family, not for them. We could have become if there had been reciprocal support. I would never be able to reclaim those 6 years. Blessed stillness prevailed for 3 months. At work, one received a promotion. I put all of the additional energy I had been using to control their pandemonium into my work. I resumed dating. I started going to therapy in order to get over the guilt that still periodically haunted me during peaceful times. I received infrequent reports from my cousin Jamie, the only family member who knew my role. The foreclosure procedure was proceeding. My grandmother had temporarily housed Mom and Tyler before evicting them for taking money out of her pocketbook. They were now residing in a small 2-bedroom apartment with a distant cousin. Tyler had to sell his expensive clothing and PlayStation. Mom's jewels had been pawned. After years of avoiding it, the reality had finally caught up with them. In light of its value, over coffee, Jamie informed me, people are beginning to see your point of view. Everyone knows you've been supporting them for years, and the things they're presenting don't make up. I nodded, but realized that familial validation no longer truly mattered to me. I was saving for the future rather than supporting their present for the first time since Dad passed away. I had opened a 401k. I was looking at programs for first-time homebuyers. I was going about my life. I got an SMS from an unidentified number 7 months after I left. The home has vanished. The Motel 6 is where we are. Please assist us. The elderly James would have hurried to their aid. A chilly wave of something between happiness and sadness washed over the new James. They had now reached their lowest point, the location they had been trying to get to for years. I asked Jamie to see how they were doing, but I didn't answer. She informed her that Tyler had secured employment at an Amazon warehouse. The income was insufficient to cover their motel stay, and the labor was exhausting. Mom had submitted an application for government aid. They were being held accountable for their acts for the first time in years. According to Jamie, they're making a strong case for the victim's story. However, they are at last taking the action that they ought to have taken years ago, accepting accountability. A year went by. I created a life that was all mine, purchased a modest condo, and began dating a person who respected limits. When I spotted him, I was in a coffee shop across town. Tyler appeared thinner and older than when I had last seen him, dressed in a warehouse uniform. Before I could make up my mind to depart, he saw me. A year's worth of unsaid words lingered between us as our eyes locked. He came carefully as though he thought I would run. "Hey," he said, the one word bearing the burden of our broken relationship. "Hey," I said. Before the barista shouted his name, we stood in awkward quiet. After grabbing his coffee and hesitating, he pointed to a table that was unoccupied. I sat against my better judgment. He said, "You look good, and it seemed sincere. Regards. How are you?" He gave a shrug. "Making ends meet. Working in the fulfillment facility. Though difficult, it's something." Additionally, Mom, who lives with Aunt Susan, started working part-time at the grocery store. His gaze was fixed on his coffee. It does not make her happy. I nearly burst out laughing at the understatement. She wasn't pleased about it, of course. Her plan had never included working. Suddenly, Tyler responded, "You were right." The words came out as quickly as if he had been suppressing them. We exploited it. I simply took advantage of it. He took a swallow. I had no idea how to halt. Letting you take care of everything was so simple. There was no apology. It wasn't really an acknowledgement, but it was the closest thing I'd ever received from him. "I should leave." "Standing," I said. "The end of my break is near." Tyler gave a nod. "James?" As I turned to go, he called. "Your ability to establish limits would have pleased your father. He always claimed that you were the stronger one, after all." Threatening to rely on Tyler to locate the one thing that could still get to me, I froze my tears. I said, "Take care of yourself," and turned to go. We may never truly be a family again, but I'm not sure. The patterns are too well established, and the harm is too extensive. Mom still thinks I left them. Tyler is just starting to see how much they are being used. However, my condo was packed with my belongings, and the space I had purchased with my money when I drove back there. I came to a significant realization. I had been striving to be the ideal brother, son, and provider for 6 years. The procedure had nearly caused me to lose myself. Refusing to be a doormat is sometimes necessary to be a decent son. Sometimes leaving is a necessary part of love, and sometimes you need to save yourself more than anybody else. They continue to struggle, still making ends meet. While a part of me feels bad, a bigger part of me understands that their current suffering is healthier than their parasitic comfort before they're finally living in reality rather than the fiction devoid of consequences that I sustained for too long. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm living for me now, and I love it. Story 3. This firm requires a vision like your brother's. Declaring, "My father gave him my business." I didn't say a thing. Devastated, they pleaded a year later. The day I saw my father give my brother the keys to the company I had founded myself was the day that I at last realized what it meant to be completely alone. Sliding over the polished wood desk was the leather folder. It was Eric's sly smile, my father's inability to look me in the eye. Something inside of me was crushed by the weight of that moment, and I was never able to fully recover. I stood there, 30 years old, my spine twisted and my hands calloused from lugging cane electrical for more than 10 years. Arriving before dawn for 14 years, night for 14 years. Certifications and courses, 14 years of establishing your name in a community where your work and word were the only things that counted. With a signature, it was all taken. And the memory of my dad's bulky signet ring resting on the desk. Samuel never showed enough dedication. As if I wasn't standing there too stiff to purchase the book, my father said to Eric, "Someone with vision is needed by this organization." Vision? That's the name he gave it. When my 3-year-old younger brother, Eric, left college to spend a year in Thailand, that's the name he gave it. When Eric tried to open a nightclub and burnt up his meager cash, it closed in 6 months. When Eric arrived at construction sites, he named it that, either hungover or not. It was me, on the other hand, who spent midnight going over designs. It was me who got the Westridge development contract, which increased our revenue, and who updated our billing system. I was the one who always followed instructions and never voiced any complaints. When my father stated, "Someday, son, this will all be yours," who believed him? Then there was Heather. God, Heather. 3 years later, the mere mention of her name still makes my chest tremble, like if someone were rubbing their fingernails over a new scar. She and I met at a housewarming celebration for a customer. This woman had honey-colored hair, eyes that wrinkled at the corners when she smiled, and a bright, cheerful personality. We made quick progress, too quickly. We may have been engaged within a year, looking at homes and organizing a wedding. I really embraced her into my universe, meals with my folks on Sundays, work parties with my team. At the time, I considered it a fortunate that she and Eric got along. I considered family harmony. I didn't notice the sidelong glances, the inside jokes, or how discussions would abruptly end when I walked into a room. In hindsight, I should have seen something wasn't right the evening Heather recommended. I answered the Boulder emergency call. Each trip is a 3-hour drive. She kissed me goodbye and added, "You have to be there for your clients. They trust you because of this." When I got back after midnight, I was exhausted but pleased of myself for managing the situation. An unknown vehicle was parked in our driveway, Eric's brand new BMW. As I headed into our bedroom and heard them, a cold pit formed in my stomach, which knew before my brain did. Those distinct noises that permanently alter you, once you have listened to them. I don't recall much of the altercation. I remembered Heather holding blankets to her breast in fragments. Eric's face was one of frustration at being discovered, not even shame. Even worse news was delivered by the light that broke when I slammed the door the next morning. Heather had a baby. I had done a business vacation 6 weeks prior, so the time was perfect. Mine or Eric's? They fell in love, but she wasn't sure. They sincerely apologized. What broke me was my father's response. Nor hostility toward his younger son. Not sympathy for me. It was only a deliberate reworking of his intentions. A week later, he called us both to his office and explained that family comes first and that blood is blood. "Samuel, you must comprehend. Your sibling will soon become a parent. Now he needs stability." My hands are still shaking when I think about what happened next. The firm transfer documents, the leather portfolio, and the house that was promised to Heather and me as a wedding gift, being turned over to her and Eric now, all for the sake of keeping family. Also ruthlessly effective, also totally legal, my father remarked, not cruelly. "You'll land on your feet. You were always the one in charge. Eric is in worse need of this than you are." I realized then that I had been mistaking the two my entire life. My mother used a monogrammed handkerchief to wipe at her tears without saying anything. She would later call me and say that she supported me and didn't agree with my father. But she sat quietly when it counted. Cooperation. Pretended to be sympathetic. All I had with me when I left the office were my certification documents, and a void that reverberated with each pulse of the heart. I didn't shout. I made no threats. I just went outside, climbed into my vehicle, and drove till the gaslight illuminated. I took a job with Reynolds Contracting in Denver, which is 3 hours away. 2 days later, I didn't say goodbye. I modified my phone number, cut the cable all the way through. I leased a modest apartment close to my new workplace. Bare walls, used furniture. It feels different to start anew at 30 than it does at 20. Your back hurts more. There are jagged edges to your optimism. Silent evenings and work filled the first several months. I volunteered for the positions no one wanted and worked every overtime shift that was offered. I pushed myself to the limit, promised, sleeping without dreams. However, an unforeseen event occurred. As the months went by, without Eric's disarray, without the shadow of my father, not always attempting to prove myself, I discovered that I was genuinely skilled at what I did. Excellent. Reynolds acknowledged it as well. After 6 months, I was given the position of team lead. After 3 months, I was running my own cruise line. By the 1-year point, I was being called by name by clients. I obtained my master electrician's license, began teaching night classes at the trade school, and made new acquaintances who accepted me without knowing anything about my background. Whether I liked it or not, I had to deal with news from home. I erased my mother's heartfelt voicemails before hearing the first phrase. Unopened Christmas cards were returned. A dulling but never entirely gone. Agony that will not go away. The first tremors of Kane Electrical's downfall started 6 months after I departed. According to a text message from a former coworker, Eric insulted the customer so severely that they immediately canceled their $200 contract after showing up to the Peterson Project meeting intoxicated. I kept my fingers on the phone. Remove. No longer my concern. The safety infraction at the Westridge development followed. Eric neglected to check before shutting the site, leaving live wires exposed overnight. A formal warning from the licensing board and a fine of $15,000. After years of directly asking me to work with Kane Electricity, the superintendent now completely refused to do so. The storm was imminent and only a matter of time, and each update came like distant thunder. 3 of our 5 main commercial clients had left by the 18-month point, according to Eric. In an attempt to patch things up, Dad had begun to show up at construction sites. His dignity was eroding as he made excuses for his chosen successor. My lips tasted metallic from the irony. Not quite sadness, not quite satisfaction, something more intricate. The dreary pain of validation. Word spread that Eric had appointed his drinking friends, men who couldn't distinguish between a light switch and a circuit breaker, as project managers. Inspection of 2 crucial installations was unsuccessful. After equipment failed due to defective wiring, a client filed a lawsuit for damages. According to industry rumors, suppliers have begun to demand advance payments. The final no-confidence vote. 1,000 cutbacks were killing the company I had put my heart and soul into. All of them may be linked to the time my father determined I wasn't deserving of my birthright. The murmurs turned into frantic whispers during my 3rd year away. In order to pay off growing bills, my father had mortgaged their home. Eric had given up all pretense of expertise and was drinking freely on construction sites. They were reviewing the company license. Heather had finally left him after a 4th serious safety infraction, taking my nephew, their son, or maybe my own son, to remain with her sister. The paternity was never verified. Every bit of information hit me like a ton of stones. I couldn't identify the feelings that made my chest clench. I felt nothing and didn't desire a name. Amid other words, I experienced too much to pinpoint a single emotion amid the storm. Here, I was creating something fresh, demonstrating proper behavior to apprentices. Occasionally, but not seriously, I doubt, healing gradually. Then came the day I saw my father standing in the entryway of the partially completed office building. When I looked up from a junction box, older, somehow smaller, the stoop of a guy carrying too much has taken the place of the confident stance. My name cracked like thin ice between his lips as he murmured, "Samuel." My hands kept working carefully, fastening wires with the accuracy that had come to define me. Every copper twist serves as a meditation and a partition between my hard-won tranquility and his despair. "Please, son, 5 minutes." I gave my apprentice a nod to take a rest before turning to confront the man who had destroyed my entire world. The alterations were startling up close. Bloodshot eyes swirling with silent entreaties, gray skin pulled too tightly over cheekbones. Hands that shook a little. I learned how to grip my first screwdriver from those calm hands. Something in me twisted, not nearly sympathy. "You appear worn out." I spoke in a neutral tone. He tried to grin, but it never made it to his eyes. "Every day, your mother inquires about you." The weight of familial duty and the well-known manipulation, like a hand crushing down on the nape of my neck. I waited without saying anything. He said, "The business," and then cleared his throat. "We're having trouble. I'm sure you've heard." I nodded once the quiet stretched between us like a live wire. Eric made an effort. The lie hung awkwardly in the air as he spoke. He did. "However, it appears that he lacks your attention to detail. Is that the new name for it?" I spoke quietly, but with a steely edge. He winced and glanced down at his pricey shoes, which were now worn and scuffed. "The legacy of your grandfather, Kane men for 3 generations. He had given me the same speech since I was a child. The dual burden and gift of family history. I was mistaken. At last he spoke, the words tumbling heavily between our lips. Like stones into still water, 3 words fell into the void between us. "It's 3 years too late." Eric ran it into the ground. "We're about to lose everything. The business, the residence. Your mother's beside herself." My heart thundered in my chest, betraying me. I thought I'd remove this urge, this longing for him to finally notice me, realize my value. The approbation I'd pursued my entire life hung before me now, like bait in a trap. "I'll sign it all over to you," he continued, eyes shining with frantic hope. "Full ownership, no strings. Come back and save it, son. It's your legacy, too." My laugh astonished even me, hollow and pointy, scratching up from a deep, wounded place. My heritage. Eric received my inheritance from you. The once you choose him, it was no longer mine. I was wrong." He edged his voice in desperation as he admitted, "The greatest error of my life." He took a step closer, the bitter smell of failure blending with the old cologne. "Samuel, your mom cries at night. She's missing you. Both of us do." As usual, the guilt card was used with skill. My chest tightened as memories came rushing back. Sunday meals, fishing excursions, and infrequent displays of delight when I had mastered a challenging skill, the father I had loved in spite of everything. "But this business," he said, taking advantage of my brief tenderness, "our family has owned it for 3 generations. It was made by your grandfather out of nothing. Is it truly possible to let it die?" Then something changed in my chest. Clarity, not forgiveness. The understanding that I had changed since leaving his office 3 years prior. His hunger for this man's acceptance had defined that guy. Something else characterized me. "Right now, it's dead already." "Silently," I said. "The day you decided I wasn't good enough, you murdered me." His fingers were shaking as he sought for my arm. I took a step back, making little yet firm movements. "A line. Do you not see?" His voice broke. "I'm attempting to correct it. Son, I need you. No need for respect or affection. Simply necessary. Conveniently, you choose Eric over me. I informed him that every word was definitive and purposeful. Now that it's required, you don't get to pick me." With my shoulders slumped under a burden I've decided to let go of, I watched him go. I slept better that night than I have in 3 years. The next setback was a text message from an unidentified number 2 weeks later. "We should discuss how your son, Heather, constantly manages to entice me back in." My stomach sinking into a bottomless pit, my hands shaking as I gazed at the screen. "Your son?" 2 words that completely upended my meticulously planned existence. The paternity test wasn't that complicated. The clinic's cheek swab, 2 weeks of introspection and restless nights, speculating about potential outcomes. The findings were released on a Tuesday morning. 99.8% likelihood. Louis Kane was 2 years old when I became his father. We met at a playground close to her sister's residence. As soon as I laid eyes on him, this little person with my eyes, my grave demeanor, and my propensity to research topics before interacting with something ancient and primordial caused a change in my chest. The knowledge that nothing will ever be the same again was like a tectonic upheaval of the heart. The fading bruise on her temple and the shadows beneath her eyes were not entirely concealed by Heather's muted makeup. I felt a chill descend upon me at seeing it. In other ways, she appeared both younger and older, worn down and vulnerable in a manner she had never let herself be with me. As she watched Louis on the swings, she explained that Eric had gone. He and a woman he met online are currently in Arizona. Last month, the divorce was completed. Why inform me now? I posed the query that had been bothering me ever since she texted me. Why not? When did he get born? Her fingers twitched the strap of her handbag uncomfortably as she averted her gaze. Her voice caught as she murmured, "I wanted to tell you. I could tell a mother knew Samuel as soon as I felt him kick." I paused, allowing her to finish. Eric changed and began drinking more after I told him I needed a paternity test. Her gaze shifted to the receding bruise and then back to my phone. "We would lose everything if the kid belonged to you," he added. "The house, the business, and the respect of his father." I clenched my jaw. "So you gave me the impression," he cursed. "After everything has calmed down, we conduct a test." Her voice trailed off as she intervened. Faster now claimed that his father wouldn't ever need to know that we were able to work things out. However, after the kid was born, Eric began to experience issues at work. Stop. Her eyes were wiped. "He persuaded me that maintaining the status quo was simply more convenient. It would be pointless to ruin everyone's life by informing you. For nothing." Flatly, I repeated, "My son was worthless." Echoing my father's admission, which came too late, she muttered, "I was wrong." It felt unfixable by the time I realized how utterly mistaken I was. How do you let someone know that you haven't seen their child in more than a year? Tears filled her eyes as they finally met mine. After that, Eric became aggressive. I was unable to. I had no idea how to make that word easier. The route of least resistance that had shaped my family's decision, making terrain into a treacherous one. However, I sensed something my father had never provided beneath Heather's words: sincere regret muddled by anxiety. As my son went down the slide, I saw him laugh. My son, who was conveniently kept away from me. My son was in need of me. Eric was gone now. Perhaps we might try again, I reasoned. For Louie's sake, Heather took a risk and touched my hand. Samuel, we got along well. I no longer felt anything at all from the contact that used to make me tingle. Tomorrow, I'll be hiring a lawyer. My gaze remained fixed on Louie as I spoke. We'll figure out support and custody, lawfully, in the right way. Samuel, one interrupted her to say, I'll be a father to him, the greatest dad I can be. But, Heather, you and I are done. Since the night I discovered you with my brother, we have been done. In the months that followed, I made a life that could accommodate Louie. Changed to a managerial role with more consistent work schedule. Discovered a 2-bedroom apartment next to a park. Constructed a bedroom for him that had a nightlight that projected stars onto the ceiling and dinosaur stickers on the walls. He was mine on Wednesday nights and every other weekend. We developed rituals, like as tales before bed and pancakes on Saturday mornings. Little holy rites that started to mend. Something in each of us. Vanessa, a commercial architect with a sharp sense of humor and perceptive eyes, and I met her at a suppliers conference. Our connection grew gradually and methodically. I had changed, where you are. Yes, but also more forthright about my needs and desires. I knew exactly where we were going by the time I presented her to Louie. A year after my father's arrival, the last altercation took place. Eric unexpectedly and uninvitedly showed up at my employment site. Wild-eyed and thinner, he exuded the frantic vitality of a guy who was running out of alternatives. So, he yelled, we're shutting next month. Dad's heart attack was minor. To cover her medical expenses, Mom sold her jewels. Everything is collapsing, and you're simply what? Living your life. Acting as though we don't exist. I refused to get sucked into his pandemonium and kept going over the designs. What I'm doing is just that. You could assist. If you so desired, you could save everything. I had a peculiar sensation of calm as I stared at my brother, actually looked at him. Eric, I'm not liable for repairing what you damaged. No more. Your family is involved. When he yelled, heads turned. No, I responded coolly. My family is Louie. I'm making Vanessa my family. Every day, the folks I've chosen pick me back. They are my relatives. Eric's bravado gave way to the terror below, and his face collapsed. I briefly had a glimpse of the younger sibling. I had assisted with homework, taught how to ride a bike, and shielded from bullies. I felt a twinge of regret for what may have been. I apologize, he muttered. Everything was damaged by me. Now I am aware of that. Too late, too little. The recurring theme in my connection with my family. But while I stood there, I came to a crucial realization. I didn't need their excuses anymore. It was their regret, not mine, that they had to bear. Eric, goodbye, I said, returning my attention to my task. Not mean, just the last one. One of my team came carefully up behind him. Is everything well, boss? I surveyed my life, my employment, my team, and the job site, constructed according to my specifications. Yes, I did say that everything is just as it should be. Through common connections, I learned 3 months later that Kane Electrical had permanently closed. After selling their home, my parents relocated to an Arizona retirement community. Eric had accepted a position in Nevada as a sales representative for an electrical supply business. Like a thin layer of snow covering the landscape without altering its fundamental form, the news descended upon me. I just acknowledged that some chapters come to an unresolved finish without feeling any sense of victory or fulfillment. Even after healing, some wounds leave scars. I got a little surprise in the mail last week. The ancient multimeter that my grandpa had used to teach me about circuits when I was 8 years old was inside. Just the worn-out instrument that had ignited my passion for my vocation, with no note. My mom did it. Her interpretation of an olive branch raised suspicions in my mind. I put it on the shelf in my home office. Next, the plan for the first structure Vanessa and I had worked on together, and the framed picture of Louie and me at the zoo. Finally, the past, present, and future were in alignment. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. I'm not aware of that. I do know, though, that sometimes what you truly need, your father's praise, your family's history, the company you helped start becomes a ghost of what you thought you wanted most. I needed to be appreciated, to be selected, to construct something genuine, something that a signature couldn't take away. Now, I'm constructing that day by day. Furthermore, unlike the company my grandpa founded, its history cannot be betrayed or transferred in a leather portfolio. My love for Vanessa, the teachings I teach my kid, the homes I assist with wiring, and the apprentices I educate are all examples of this heritage. Every month, the solid physical weight of Vanessa's head on my shoulder or Louis resting on my chest replaces the phantom weight of carrying my family's expectations, though some days I still wake up with it. I'll bear that burden. Thank you. It is liberating to carry that weight.